Okay.
Yeah, she hasn't sent back yet. So, oh, no, not yet. So she hasn't got in yet, Cindy.
Okay.
Wonder if she'd send it to her again.
Okay, so the participants will be joining us shortly.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so we are now live and we are streaming on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to ask Sonia to start the meeting and I will go offline for a minute to ensure the mayor can get in.
Okay, perfect.
Great, thank you, Cindy. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the open house for the Central Frontenac official plan. My name is Sonia Bolton. I'm the manager of community planning for the County of Frontenac, and I have the privilege this evening of helping to host the virtual open house that we're having. I'm joined this evening by some other staff as well. We have Cindy Dakeman, who is the deputy clerk for the township, as well as Kathleen Kuman, CAO and clerk for the township, as well as Joe Gallivan, who is the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the county. So good evening, everybody. I understand too, we will have some of our elected officials joining us this evening as well. Do we have anybody online yet? Sorry, Cindy, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. I'm just, yes, I'll just be a minute while I get the participant list up here. So we have Councillor Nikki Gowdy with us, and we have Frances, the mayor's on as she's in the participant, so I'm going to move her over.
Yeah, because she's not on video, I think. She just sent a message.
That's right. And Victor Hayes is on. So far we've got Victor Hayes and Nikki Gowdy and our mayor, who I'm going to move over so she can say a few words.
Wonderful.
Okay. Mayor Smith, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Shall we wait a few minutes, or how many participants do we have?
We have 20 participants right now.
Okay, so are we ready to go?
I believe so.
I believe so, yes. If you want to say a few words of welcome, Mayor Smith, that would be wonderful.
Okay, I can do that. Welcome to those 20 people and maybe the 20 more that will join us if they're having some difficulty getting in. I'm so glad that you can be here with us tonight. This will be our last open house. I think this is open house number 6 to hear from folks. COVID sort of delayed us for a while, so we're back at it and hoping to get the plan finalized in a short time from now. So please give us your comments, good, bad, or indifferent, and we will take those and see what we can do with it to make this the best plan that we can have for the next 10 years. So I'll turn it over to Joe and Sonia.
Great, thank you, Mayor Smith. So just a reminder to those that may have just joined us. So we are recording the open house tonight, and we are currently also streaming live on YouTube. So there may be people who are watching that are not listed as other participants or panelists this evening, but just joining in. Just a brief overview of the agenda for tonight. Cindy is going to give a short review on the virtual platform that we're using and how people can participate and ask questions. We'll have a presentation about the official plan by Joe Gallivan. And then following Joe's presentation, we will also have a question and answer session. So there'll be an opportunity for people to ask questions or provide comments. We are here certainly to listen to what your concerns, comments, and ideas are so that we can take those back to council. We have a special council meeting lined up for May 18th for the formal public meeting for the official plan. So certainly anything that we hear tonight, we will be taking that to council in May. And then we'll wrap up with a few next steps. And so for now, I'll turn it over to Cindy so she can go through procedurally how people can participate online tonight.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sonia. Can everybody see the slides that are up on the screen?
I'm
Yes.
seeing them on my end, yes.
Okay, perfect. So for the question and answer session, just good evening and welcome. I just wanted to caution everyone that this is the first time that myself and planning staff have run a public engagement session virtually. So there may be some glitches as we move along, and we ask for your patience. Before we start, just to let people know that sometimes in the evening our internet can be a little bit glitchy, so you may experience throughout the evening some unstable images, frozen screens, and audio issues. Those usually resolve themselves within a few seconds. However, if in the event the meeting is terminated or you get kicked out of the meeting, we will try to restart the meeting, and you may have to try to log in again. Worst case scenario, if there's a critical error and we can't restart the meeting, we will put a notice up on our website. So just check back at centralfrontenac.com and we'll provide additional instructions and information at that point. Hopefully we won't have to do that. In the meantime, so once the meeting is open to the public, Sonia will ask if there's any comments or questions. What we would ask people to do is, if you do wish to speak, if you can use the raise hand feature, which is should be down at the bottom of your screen. That will alert me that somebody is wanting to speak, and I will enable you at that point and call out your name. If you're joining us by phone, it may just be your phone number that shows up at my end. So you may need to identify who you are if your name isn't showing up on your image when you're allowed to talk. Just going to advance to the next slide. If you are joining us by telephone, raising the hand feature is done by dialing *9. That will alert me that you wish to speak, and so just be patient. We'll call on you when it's time. Sometimes there's audio issues. If you can't hear the chair or the chair can't hear you, you can check your audio settings in the bottom left hand of your screen. This screen would pop up and you just check off automatically adjust microphone volume. That will allow Zoom to control your computer audio and microphone, and that usually will fix it. Or you can use the sliders up above, the built-in microphone and output. Hopefully will resolve the issues. So if you're connecting via smartphone and you're unable to speak, you'll need to permit audio controls for Zoom to access your microphone in the audio settings of the phone. And finally, if you experience technical difficulties and cannot speak, please send a chat message to the host or email me at cdeachman@centralfrontenac.com with your comment. We'll make sure it gets put into the system and addressed if we can at the meeting, if not following the meeting. So again, once we get to the question and answer, the moderator will identify those who wish to speak. And this is the raise hand button here at the bottom that you can use. And we'll ask you to identify yourself before you give your comments so that we know who's speaking. And I think that's all I had to say. I'll turn it back over to Joe to start the presentation.
Joe, you're muted.
Thank you, Kathy. It's not the first time I've done that. Good evening, Mayor Smith and the members of the council who are attending, and staff and residents of Central Frontenac. Thanks for tuning in tonight. My name again is Joe Gallivan. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development with Frontenac County. For those who may not know, even though we're with the County of Frontenac, our department does all the day-to-day land use planning for Central Frontenac, from these policy issues like the official plan we're going to talk about tonight, down to the zonings, dealing with food trucks, dealing with minor variances, waterfront additions, you name it, we deal with it. So we're very familiar with the landscape of Central Frontenac. Now tonight, I'm going to take you through what I would call a very high-level overview of the third draft of the official plan. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm giving you a high-level overview. First of all, this is open house number 6. Township Council has been holding open houses for the last 3 years on the issue and have heard a lot of public comments. Secondly, the third draft that was delivered to Township Council in December is not a lot different from the second draft. And I'll get into that a little later as I go through my slides, but there's not a lot of changes that have been made between the second and third draft. And number 3 is this is an open house. And if anything, I hope as I go through the plan with you, it just inspires you to, if you haven't had a chance, to go on the township website, download the plan, go through it in more detail. And between now and May 18th, when we hold the public meeting with council, if you have any questions, you can send them to any of us at the staff level or to the mayor or council, and we can answer them beforehand. And we will certainly be prepared to answer any questions after the public meeting on May 18th. So with that, I'm going to ask Cindy to go to the next slide. So just quickly for the context, and all of you probably know what Central Frontenac is already. It's a very rural area. You have well over 100 lakes and rivers, very natural environment, just under 4,500 permanent residents. That more than doubles with the summer residents. Very high proportion of waterfront development. The tax base, similar to most of Frontenac County, is almost entirely residential in nature, and our population growth is relatively limited. Next, please. So just quickly, what is an official plan? So I've got some wording there. It's a policy document. It's a 25-year vision of how the community wants Central Frontenac to grow. Usually it's updated and considered by council and by the citizens every 5 years. The Planning Act has changed that if you're doing a brand new plan, like we're doing in this case, it doesn't have to be updated until every 10 years, but ultimately that is a decision of council. Next slide, please. So this is the document itself. It's composed of 2 things. It's composed of written policy, which I'll go through with you, and a map, which is a land use schedule, which kind of paints a picture of the different forms of development throughout Central Frontenac. What an official plan is not, is it's not a zoning bylaw, which maybe you're more familiar with. It doesn't lay out detailed regulations about what you can do with your property. It doesn't set out how big of a dwelling you can build. It doesn't set out how many feet you have to be set back from the waterfront. It doesn't tell you how many stories you're permitted to build or the types of uses you can have specifically on your property. That's in the zoning bylaw. Now, when this process is complete, we'll come back to Township Council next year and ask them if they want us to start a new zoning bylaw, because under the Planning Act, you have a couple of years to update your zoning to be conforming with your official plan. So that's something we'll be looking at in the next year or 2. Next, please. So again, this is just an overview. There's 5 sections of the draft official plan. Again, I encourage you to read the plan online if you haven't already. You will note that all the pieces that have changed have been highlighted in yellow, so it'll be easy for you to see what's been changed. Council went through it in detail in December, but again, if you go through it and you have questions in detail, please contact us. Next, please, Cindy. This just gives you an idea of what we're allowed to do when we write the plan, what we have to follow when we write the plan. And it's all based on how the province lays out planning in Ontario. So you can see there's a pyramid of how we do planning in any municipality. At the top is the provincial direction under the Ontario Planning Act. There's a document that's updated every 5 to 10 years called the Provincial Policy Statement, which lays out very clear provincial expectations on different land uses like agricultural, rural, expansion of settlement areas, etc. And then there are what are called upper tier plans. Now, an upper tier plan in this case is the County of Frontenac has a plan, a regional plan that covers the entire area of the county, which was completed in 2016. And then what you see in that chart, a lower tier plan, which is the township official plan. So all of the things above in that triangle are things that we have to follow, review, and adhere to when we're putting this plan together. And then underneath the official plan are other different planning issues that we can be involved with. So for example, a community improvement plan, which sometimes you call a Main Street plan, that's something that can be done if there's official plan policies, and the township has done one for Sharbert Lake. There's also the zoning bylaw, issues like site plan control, and any approvals for minor variances or consents are all based on policies that you will see in the township official plan. And you'll see words there that say shall be consistent with. So that's a very clear direction from the province. In other words, you have to make sure that what you have in your township plan in terms of policy can't go against the policy standards in the Ontario provincial policy statement. You have to be consistent with it. You can't ignore the policies. You have to follow them. Some are very prescriptive and specific, others are more generalized, but we went through the entire PPS in detail when we put the plan together. Next, please. So this is one of the things that's changed as council has gone through this plan review. The provincial policy statement was updated last May. And so again, if you take a look at the draft plan, you'll see that we spent some time going through the entire document and making sure it was entirely up to date with the new provincial policy statement. Next, please. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the county has an official plan, a regional plan, which was created in 2016. It's a very high level plan. Basically, it really promotes collaborative land use planning between the 4 townships, planning using the watersheds of the region and not necessarily the municipal boundaries. And one of the benefits, I think, of having the county plan is it is written respecting and understanding what's on the ground in our area. So it sets the tone for supporting and permitting the types of uses that will blend into the rural area of Frontenac. Before the plan was approved in 2016, there was a gap between the township official plan and the provincial policy statement. So there was nothing there to sort of balance out the provincial policy statement with the township official plan. And also, the official plan was in those days approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And now, after council adopts this plan later this year, it will not need to be approved by the ministry. It will be approved by county council. And the benefit, in my opinion, of that is that the 8 members of county council who will be making a decision on the plan understand Frontenac. 2 of the 8 members, of course, Councillor McDonald and Mayor Smith, are on county council, so they'll have gone through this whole process and be able to explain to any councillors how we've come to the decision. So that's a positive thing as well. Next, please. So I'm going to take you quickly through some sections of the plan. Again, it's high level. And again, I'm going to say this a few times. Please take your time if you do have an interest to pick up the plan and take a look at it in detail. So let's quickly talk about the rural areas. So there is a section in the plan that covers the rural area of the official plan. Again, there is a land use schedule. And if you take a look at it, and it's online as well, most of the lands in Central Frontenac are designated rural. And the rural areas are intended to provide for a wide variety of land uses because of the variety of lot sizes, the different situations. Some parts of Central Frontenac are very rural. Some are very much wetlands, water courses, etc. And this area tries to cover it all. It also covers other pieces like farming, potential commercial areas, industrial areas, pits, aggregates, and so on. Next, please. So just quickly, obviously rural residential is a permitted use, and we do deal with applications for lot creation in the rural area. So generally we're looking at lot sizes of about 2 acres. And that is essentially a lot area that can ensure that when you install a well and a septic on a new lot, there's not going to be any interference. It's going to be environmentally safe to do so. We do talk about 2 different zones in the rural area. the traditional rural zone and also the limited service zone. So if you look at the zoning map, you will see this LSR zone and along a number of waterfront areas. And those areas are essentially development that's on private roads, on right-of-ways, on roads that are not owned or maintained by the municipality. And essentially, when they say limited service, it's just a heads up to say, we're not going to be doing snow plowing. We're not collecting garbage. It is a private road, and the maintenance of that road is the responsibility of the landowner or landowners on that road. Next, please. And as I said, the official plan talks about different types of commercial and rural operations and industrial operations in the rural area. If you go into detail in the plan, there's different checklists of what you have to go through if you're going to build something new, and what the impacts could be on adjacent properties to make sure there's no negative impact on adjacent properties. We also use a tool called site plan control, which is a tool that says, okay, you need to show us on your property exactly where you're going to put this building, where you're going to operate this industrial use. Most recently, we used site plan control in not in the rural area, but in the village of Arden. For, if you may be familiar, there's a new gas station that's been built there, and that went through site plan control as well. Next, please. And again, agriculture and farming. So in Central Frontenac Township, there is no lands. We're in the Canadian Shield, no lands at all that are designated as prime agricultural, high quality soil lands by the province. Irregardless of that, there's still some active farming within Central Frontenac, and we're trying to promote new small scale farming. So we're trying to promote different agricultural uses and also agricultural related uses or farm diversified uses to allow people to establish a farming operation, but also maybe in terms of running the business to have other uses on the site that are compatible and don't cause problems with adjacent properties. Next, please. So this slide talks about farm-related use and farm accommodation. There is a new policy section that's not in the existing official plan that talks to these. Again, part of the reason we put these in is because the new provincial policy statement has new policies that promote this. Also, in terms of potential to allow people to come and enjoy the farms through accommodation, we're recommending that council consider that, and we can control that through the zoning bylaw. Quickly on settlement areas. So a settlement area is a formal definition in the provincial policy statement that basically describes an area as being compact and having a mix of uses, not just residential, but institutional, commercial, post office, pharmacy, etc. So the list you see here are the settlement areas that are recommended to be included in the new official plan. We're recommending that 2 areas that are in the current official plan not be included moving forward. One of them is the little crossroads called Elm Tree. The other one's a little community of Godfrey, essentially on 38 and Westport Road. We don't think those meet the settlement areas. Next slide, please. So there has been a lot of staff have received a lot of emails and a number of phone calls, and councillors and the mayor have received calls on allowing Henderson to stay as a settlement area. Originally, staff were recommending it not be included. However, council at their meeting last night passed a resolution that said, put Henderson back in as a settlement area. And this slide is to say that Henderson is back as a settlement area. So that'll be moving forward as we head to the public meeting. I just wanted to clarify that tonight. Anyone who's sitting in from the Henderson area, it's back on the map. Council made that decision last night. Next, please. So just a bit on aggregates and mining. Again, under the provincial policy statement, we're required to protect those resources for the long term. I'm sure if you've driven down a number of roads in the township, there's a number of pits and some quarries. The policies you see in the plan essentially come out of the provincial policy statement in terms of setback requirements, areas of protection. We have put some designations on the map, and those areas are provided, those designations have been provided to us by the Ministry of Natural Resources. Existing pits and quarries, and also aggregate areas that, although they may not have been developed, they need to be protected for the long term. Next, please. And those are the general policies, again, right out of the PPS. Next. So the natural heritage section, this is obviously a very important section for Central Frontenac because of all the wilderness and all the amazing wetlands, rivers, streams, etc. So we've basically, again, the section in the provincial policy statement is very strong, and we have put those policies in place. We've also specifically highlighted something called the Algonquin to Adirondacks Park Corridor, which is, and you can look it up online, but it's an organization trying to ensure that over the next 50 to 100 years, the land areas between Algonquin Provincial Park and the Adirondacks in Upper New York State have a level of protection so wildlife has the opportunity to move freely through this very large area over the long term. So right now, the draft plan has a policy that recognizes that and just reminds us as we're doing our planning to keep that in mind when we're looking at redevelopment of lands. Next, please. This is just to reinforce the illustration of across the county of all the crown land we have, all the lakes we have, and all the wetlands we have. It is who we are, without a doubt. It's our sense of place. And that's why this policy section is fairly strong. This is a map that shows the settlement area boundary for the land settlement between the Algonquins of Ontario, the provincial government, and the federal government. This is the boundary that, and it covers all of Frontenac County with the exception of the islands, the township of Frontenac Islands. The land claim was originally filed in 1983, and negotiations have been ongoing for some time. There is an agreement in principle. I know that the province has been consulting with the township on next steps, and the plan, it's important that the plan specifically recognize the land claim and what it means for the future of Central Frontenac. And as part of that, the township reached out to the Algonquins between the second and third draft to ask them their comments on the plan and if they supported some of the economic development initiatives that are included in the plan. Next, please. So if you go to the new draft plan, there's a policy section that includes wording that comes exactly from the Algonquins. We received very detailed comments from the Algonquins, very positive in nature on the vision for Central Frontenac. And so you'll notice there's quotes around what's on this screen and the next. And those are the words that have come from the Algonquins in their letter to the township. And they have been put in verbatim into the plan out of respect for the Algonquins. So you can see that they support future economic development endeavors working together with the township. They want to have a partnership approach. They strongly support the vision that's in the official plan with respect to Charbot Lake, recognize it has the potential for it to be a lot of things in the future, and that sense of place needs to be protected. Next. I'll get to what they describe above the Highway 7 Parkway in a moment. They essentially say that they do not support the Ministry of Transportation eventually building a 400 series highway where Highway 7 is now. They understand the negative implications that could be to the community. The comment on the water in all forms is considered by the Algonquins to be the lifeblood of Mother Earth. That is now in the draft official plan. Next. So now I'll talk a little bit about the waterfront area. Again, this section of the plan hasn't changed very much from the very first draft. When we were working on these policies, I worked closely with the Ministry of the Environment on best practices. We did the same when we did the North Frontenac official plan about 4 years ago. And there's very much similarities between the policies in this draft plan and the North Plan. And from a planning perspective, I think that they're much more comprehensive in nature than what we have right now. So right out at the beginning, it says the goal overall is to protect water quality. It defines the waterfront area as generally being 500 feet from a shoreline. That's also in the county official plan. And one thing you will note, if you go to the map, the land use schedule, you're not going to see any waterfront designation. Everything at the waters is either designated environmental protection, wetland, or mostly rural. And again, the plan notes that there will be waterfront zoning when we do the new zoning bylaw, but we'll be ground truthing that using the 150 meters as a basis, but we'll be going around each lake and defining where the waterfront zoning should go. And again, that'll be a public process. There's general development policies, which we'll get into in a sec. And then there is a special policy protecting the lake trout lakes, which were required to by the province. So lake trout lakes in Central Frontenac include the West Basin of Charlotte Lake. It includes Eagle Lake, Hungry Lake. There's a number of them that are listed in the official plan. And there's special restrictions on those lakes. Next, please. Yeah, just to highlight the general development policies. Next, Cindy, I'll go through those. So again, I encourage you to go through the plan if you haven't. This section is really the bones of how we're trying to protect the waterfront and the lakes in Central Frontenac. It lists the permitted uses, the general development standards, recommends a minimum lot size of 2 acres with 250 feet of frontage, a 30-meter setback on most lakes. Next, please. There's a policy in there that council can consider at some point if they wish to establish a tree preservation bylaw to protect the removal of trees around the waterfront of lakes. There's policies about redevelopment on existing lots of record, whether they're vacant or not. The use of requiring an environmental impact study on certain applications, and certainly when we're reviewing lots, not every waterfront lot is the same. The topography could be different. Obviously, the lot size can be different. Depends on the lake we're dealing with as well. So we have a policy that says council may ask for someone to do an environmental impact study before they get approvals to build something on their property. We've got policies about waterfront access development. In other words, if you have a property on an island or on a lake that you need to use a boat to get to the property, there's specific policies to do with that. And servicing, and then overall the aesthetic characteristics of the lake, which what we're trying to say there is that it isn't just the lot size and the lot frontage of a waterfront lot that goes into protecting the characteristic of a lake. There's more to it than that, and that's the comprehensive nature of these policies. Next, please. So there is a couple of special policies in the waterfront. I'll bring your attention to this one because the current official plan does not have any policies dealing with this lake, which is White Lake, which is located on the north side of Highway 7. You can see the western edge of Charlotte Lake at the bottom right corner of the map. Now, the area that I've highlighted there is lands that are owned by the province. They're owned by the Ministry of Natural Resources. And over the last almost 100 years, the ministry has been acquiring land around White Lake. Next, please. The main reason they've done that is if you don't know this, there is a fish culture station at White Lake. It is one of the few remaining that is managed by the province of Ontario. So there's a policy section that's been added that recognizes that this fish culture station has been in operation on the lake since 1933. It is designated as a certified fish sanctuary. In other words, there's no fishing permitted on White Lake. And high lake water quality is important to maintain the fish hatchery on the lake. It's a spring-fed lake. The fish culture station depends entirely on the water quality of the lake. So we put a special policy together that says, compared to other lakes, we're expecting to have larger lots for new private development. We've also put a section in there that says any new development, whether you create a new lot or you buy a lot, you must do an environmental impact study. It's very clear you have to do that before you can get a building permit. And again, I encourage you to look at that section if you haven't already. Next, please. So I'll talk a little bit about the special policy section on Charlotte Lake, which is very comprehensive. It's called Destination Charlotte Lake, and it's an attempt to really make sure that in the long term, the next 25 years and more, that the village we have today is protected and enhanced. Next, please. So there's basically 5 pieces to this policy section. There's a section called First Impressions, getting into the village, especially from the south end, supporting what we have in the core right now. Obviously, the waterfront is so important. The village of Charlotte Lake is surrounded by water. The Highway 7 Parkway, and then there's also a policy section on Via Rail's high frequency rail project. Next, please. So the first impression is essentially this view you get when you drive into Charlotte Lake, that if you're not familiar with the village, you come across it for the first time, this is a pretty stunning image. You're driving across a causeway into a village that's surrounded by water. So there's some policies in there to talk about maybe in the future, the community will want to have a gateway there. And the next slide just gives an example of what we have in Gravenhurst. And again, this is an example. And the other thing about this policy section is that the 5 pieces that are in it, there's no strategy about we have to do number A and then follow B, C, D, or E. It's more a collection of ideas of how to improve the village over the long term. Next, please. This is just the image looking south towards the causeway of the village. You can see Mike Dean's grocery store over on the right hand of the screen, and then of course 38 right in front of you. You can see how important the policies are for waterfront protection, and also making sure that the core is well protected and the community be involved in any significant redevelopment within the village core. Next. So the Highway 7 Parkway concept. Again, as staff, we were advised a number of years ago that as part of the regional plan by MTO, they're looking at creating the 400, extending the 400 series highway on Highway 7. You may know now that it goes west out of Ottawa and it terminates at Carleton Place, and it also terminates to the west of Charlotte Lake down in Peterborough County in the city of Peterborough. We did hire an engineering firm to take a look at what the implications would be if that 400 series highway was built to MTO standards. And although I don't have a slide here tonight, we do have images that show that essentially all the businesses you see at 7 and 38 would have to disappear. It would also make Charlotte Lake in a lot of ways a drive-by community. Just like a lot of communities along the 400 series highways, people are just driving by them. And we didn't want that to happen here. So there is a policy section that says, gives a heads up to MTO, and this policy section is strongly supported by the Algonquins, that in the future, the township expects to see this section to be more of a parkway, more like you would see in the Thousand Islands Parkway than a high-speed highway, that we would expect the traffic to slow down. And if you can go to the next slide, please. That is particularly at the 38 interchange, it would start to become more of a complete community at that interchange. There'd be a stop sign, stop lights at 38 and 7, very much a reduced speed, very similar to what you see Highway 7 is when you go through Perth. So in the long term, that area will become more part of the village and less part of a 100-kilometer highway. So those policies are pretty clearly laid out in the plan. And then next, please. So the last slide is just a map from Via Rail that shows their proposed high-frequency rail line that they would take from Toronto to Ottawa and eventually on to Montreal and Quebec City. And you'll see that Charlotte Lake is identified on the Via Rail's map. The last federal budget last week has allocated an additional $400 million+ to advancing the high frequency rail project. There's been no communication from Via Rail in detail about what their plans are, but this is in place to make it clear that the community supports the high frequency project and the benefits it could bring to Charlotte Lake, and that a train should stop at Charlotte Lake. So next, please. I think that ends my overview of the plan. Again, I've said it a number of times. We can answer some questions tonight, but the main reason tonight is just to encourage you to take a more detailed look at the plan before you speak to council on May 18th. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sonia.
Great, thanks very much, Joe. I think before we we've got a slide up here about next steps, but we are going to take a time here to answer some questions or take some comments from people. I am going to be taking notes, so if you see me not looking directly at the camera, it's because I am writing down what people are saying. One item of housekeeping, we did have a question in the chat forum early on about disclosing the list of attendees. So Cindy, I'm not sure if there's an alternate way of doing this, but I do know that in Zoom, if you scroll along the bottom of your screen, there's an icon that shows sort of the outline of two people called participants. You can click on that, and there's often an opportunity. There's a couple tabs at the top to see panelists as well as attendees and the names that they have included in terms of logging on this evening. So I do know that in the chat forum, we did have a request from one person already for questions, and I see there are a couple of hands up. So I'm going to get ready to take some notes, and I'm just going to turn it over to Cindy now, who is going to facilitate opening it up to one person at a time in order to ask their question or provide comments.
Thank you, Sonia. The first one that on the list with the hand up is Jean Brown. So I'm going to allow her to come in and speak. Might just take a minute, Jean, for you to come in. Can you hear us, Jean?
Yes, I unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Great. Yeah, okay, thanks. So I'll start. Thanks for the presentation. It's great. And thanks for getting Henderson on. I live in Henderson Village. So we have to all pull together in this. So there's no sense ranting and raving. We'll just see what we can do. Just a few questions about the designations. There's Hamlet, which Henderson is now a hamlet along with others. And then you were talking, Joe, about rural residential. So my question is then about being a hamlet. The Frontenac news reporter was sort of making insinuations that Henderson didn't really qualify to be a hamlet and that we might not live up to our expectations. Well, I don't really know what the expectations are. I mean, we're responsible. We're one of the very few villages that we cut our own grass at the cemetery. We haven't turned that over to the township. We're one of the few halls where we contribute to the hall. So I'm just wondering if that's a smokescreen about how we're not doing enough, or just what would that be about? What would that? Could you just outline that more, please?
Sure. Can you hear me, Jean? It's Joe Gallagher.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Thanks for your question, and maybe I'll ask the mayor to comment as well after I speak about the newspaper article. I'm only going to comment on the land use planning side. So now that you're back in as a settlement area, when we do the zoning for Henderson will be different than the surrounding rural area. It'll be a hamlet zone. And again, it'll have slightly different uses because the lots are smaller. We're going to have maybe tighter restrictions on what you can have on your property. So for example, there's a policy in the draft plan that says you can't have backyard chickens in a settlement area, only if permitted through a licensing bylaw. So there'll be a few more restrictions, but the character of Henderson from this plan, in my opinion, won't change. And I'm going to turn it over to the mayor to see if the mayor would like to comment.
Sure, Joe. Just as you said, the character of Henderson and the fact that Henderson in the name and the community will never be lost. But I think people felt if they weren't in the plan named as the little village hamlet of Henderson, that they would just disappear. And I understand that concern. I don't believe that would have happened. And I do hope I don't know the size of the lots in Henderson, but I do think there will be more restrictions because hamlet restrictions are greater than in the rural zoning area. So I think we'll have to see how it works out.
Yeah, well, we can live with that. I think restrictions are good. It's kind of a free for all here now. So having somebody say, sharpen up or do this or do that, I think that might be kind of refreshing. Anyway, we're quite pleased with how it's going. So we want to say thanks a lot about that. And then another question, you were talking about rural residential needing 2 acres per lot. And in order to keep up the land use, protect the land and the water and all that. And I do see that, but I don't see then how there can be such concentrated housing in the more built up areas. I don't see how that, my concern about the concentrated housing in built up areas is that the septic and wells and all that are there are going to be compromised. And I come from a village that had to put in a water treatment center, and it's not cheap. So, that's, our taxes are just going up, but would go up again if we had to pay for that. So that is my concern about this, these municipal wells, or no, water and sewage and septic in built up areas. I think it's a concern. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
All right, so Jean, did you have any other comments?
Well, another question would be, are funds distributed based on how many hamlets that you have, like funds for water and shoreline development or signage or grants for halls? It seems to me would be distributed based on how many hamlet villages you had. Am I correct in that?
Maybe I could answer that. Or Kathy, basically when we do a budget, we budget for the whole of the township and look at the facilities that need different things. We try to be fair across the whole 4 districts. And usually what happens in roads, for instance, is if you look at a 10-year spread, chances are everybody comes out somewhat even, depending on where the demand is and where the most travel is. Like 38 Highway takes a lot of our dollars for maintenance because it was a provincial highway and it's very well used. So, but the official plan does not dictate where the money gets spent.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, well, thanks for answering the questions. I think you guys are doing a great job, and it's not been easy, but it's good to get everything out on the table like this, and we look forward to the next one coming up on May 18th. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jean. I'll remove you back to the attendee list, but if you have any other questions later on, you can always raise your hand again. Thank you very much. Okay, so next we have Nikki Gowdy. And I understand that Sherry Wan is also on the meeting as well, but she may be signed in as Nikki. So I'm not sure if I've brought in Nikki or if I've brought in Sherry Wan. Nikki, can you hear us? I have you muted. Can you unmute?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a question, Cindy. I just wanted to let everyone know that Councillor Wan was at the meeting.
Ah, okay, thank you. Perfect. So next we have Phil Mosier is so I will move Phil over, and Phil, if you can unmute when you're ready.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, a little on the quiet side, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try and speak up. I just I want to say I did have a chance to briefly read the latest draft of the official plan, and I just want to say kudos to staff. It's a very good document. I represent the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and our office, as well as the Mississippi Valley, had provided some joint comments into the process in 2019. And so kind of, you know, I mean, as these things evolve, and certainly there's subsequent drafts of official plans, I was wondering if there would be the opportunity, and certainly don't need to get into it this evening with staff, but just to kind of go through some of our comments, because I know there was some staff changes with Megan had sort of been taking the project lead, and we just want to make sure, as some of the partner conservation authorities that provide service to Central Frontenac, that we have a chance to kind of discuss some of our comments. Most of the comments that we had were sort of in relation to some suggested wording for natural hazards, wetlands, and the waterfront area. And so if possible, it would be just a nice way for us to close the loop on our end to have some of those conversations.
Joe Gallivan, thank you, Phil. And the answer is yes. If you can reach out to either myself or to Cindy at the township office, and we can set something out, and I'm pleased that you were going to provide additional comments hopefully before council adopts the plan. That would be the goal. So thank you, Phil.
Okay, thanks so much, Joe. I'll reach out and I can go from there. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. Now, next I have Doug Cummings wishes to speak, so I will move him in. Doug, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Nice job in the presentation, folks. I'm a lifetime seasonal resident of Central Frontenac with a cottage on Eagle Lake. Happens to be water access.
Oh, sorry. I think we've lost him. No.
Sorry, you there?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Can you start again, please?
Sure. Sorry about that. I started off by saying nice job to you guys on the presentation and the plan document. I'm a lifetime seasonal resident of Central Frontenac, and have a water access cottage on Eagle Lake. And I happen to also right now be the president of the Eagle Lake Property Owners Association. So, and it's great to see the whole theme of water being foundational to the plan, given the geography, etc. A couple of specific questions, and maybe the first one is too specific, and it's kind of personal for me in the fact that I'm a water access cottage. But when we think about the water and protecting it, there's a lot of water access properties on a lot of the lakes in the township, and we all struggle with getting septic pumping services. And is that something to remote locations? Is that something that's too specific, this as a development priority for you to be focused on, or not? I just raise it as a point because I've organized it a couple times on our lake, and I know Charlotte Lake as well. And like we're now spending a couple grand each to get pump outs done, $2,500. And just something I wanted to put on your radar for something that might be focused on from an economic development perspective.
Okay. Hi, Doug. Thanks for being here tonight. It's Joe Gallivan. I'm not sure exactly what your question is. Are you asking if the township would consider operating some kind of collective system that would, like a barge operation that would go to waterfront access lots in the summer to collect the septic?
I'm suggesting that it's a big hole and a potential exposure environmentally for the township, and I don't know what the solution is, whether it's the township doing the collective or whether it's supporting some other organization to get in here and do it with us for the wider community. But I think it's a risk factor for us environmentally.
Okay.
Doug, it's Mayor Smith.
Yes.
You and I've talked about this before, and the problem is there are not too many pumpers around that have a barge. Maybe this is something that we need to collectively bring to the province to see if possibly they would look at some kind of a business grant to get someone started, because we can't be the only lakes in Ontario that are having the same issue. there's definitely a need for a septic hauler with a barge that can work on these lakes. I certainly would be willing to help figure out how we could contact the province and see if they have any avenue to help us.
Great. Again, I don't want to get down too detailed on you, but it's just one of the things which I think, as I said, is could be a risk factor for our ecosystem. The other question I had was around, I noticed in the lake system health section of the plan, a couple things. One is you call out the fact that you do want the input of lake associations, which I think is terrific. And we have an obligation to get back to you on that around stewardship. But specifically, there was an addition with the yellow highlighting about implementing a community planning permit system. And I didn't see any, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see any other details about what does that look like and what is it?
It's Joe Gallivan. Yeah, that's, thank you for bringing that up. So that is a new, well, it's not new, I shouldn't say that. It's a different planning tool that can be used that is more, I don't want to get in, I hope I don't sound like a planner. It's a planning tool that hasn't been used a lot. It's been promoted by the provincial government for at least 15 years. And it is, for lack of better words, it's a tool that you can do a lot of things with at once. So sometimes when we're dealing with a new waterfront lot, or we're dealing with a cottage addition, and we're trying to make sure that the solution we come up with in terms of the addition, working with the property owner and the conservation authority, et cetera, is of benefit to the lake quality and to the characteristics of the lake. Sometimes we don't have the tools in place to do the things we need to do. We can't necessarily say, for example, you're going to plant vegetation here, here, and here on your waterfront property, or you're going to have to install a stormwater runoff system. So when the water off your eaves troughs of your new addition comes off, it's not going to go to the lake, it's going to be diverted. And I'm really paraphrasing here. A community planning permit system takes a variety of tools we have now and combines them into one. So in terms of problem solving, it's a better tool. I'll just say that. And I can let you know that about a year and a half ago, the Frontenac County worked with Queen's University School of Planning, and we worked with a team of planning students for half a year. They were assigned to look at better ways of protecting the waterfront in Frontenac County. They did a study that was completed in December 2019, and it recommended that we look at this tool for all the benefits. And I'm just listing a few off here tonight. It is on our radar, Doug, as staff. We have talked to township staff about coming to each council to talk about the benefits of it, and we'll hopefully be doing that in the next year. And if you want more information, you can contact me directly and I can send you some background.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next we have Sylvia and Paul McKenzie. I am bringing in.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Joe. This has really been very informative for us as relatively new residents to Sharbot Lake. It's a good introduction for us to learn about the township. I just have two questions. One, early on, you mentioned the land use schedule, and I looked in the official plan for it and I can't find it. Is it attached to the draft plan?
Maybe I get Cindy to answer that question.
Sure, it is right now on our website. It is not attached to the draft plan. There is a separate drop-down box that has the maps in it. There should be two versions of the maps because we did an earlier version, and then just last night at council we amended, got approval to amend the plan. So both versions of the map will be listed under the official plan with and they're listed with their dates.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay,
but yes,
great.
right now it's not attached to the draft plan. It is,
but they are on the website.
Yes, they are.
Okay, great.
And if you have any trouble finding them, just let me know and I
All
can
right.
send you the link.
Okay, thanks, Cindy.
You're welcome.
And then just a point of clarification, am I to understand that the zoning for rural versus LSR, is that new as of 2018? Or was that there before and you've just slightly amended it?
Yeah, it's Joe Gallivan again. It's been in place, trying to recall, maybe Cindy, you can help me. The last zoning bylaw for the township was done in 2010. It's been in place at least since then. And it's not particular to Central Frontenac. It's a type of zoning that's used in other townships in Frontenac County to recognize that, you know, if you're on a private road and you're on the waterfront, and just be prepared to be recognizing that the services are going to be limited compared to being on a public road.
Joe, I can answer that. It's probably, this is Kathy speaking, probably well back before 2006.
Okay.
We've had an LSR zone.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Terry Kennedy. I'm going to allow him. Okay. Terry Kennedy's using an older version of Zoom, so I'm going to promote him to a panelist so he can come in that way. There he is. Okay, so you are muted. Can you unmute? There we
Yes, I
go.
can.
We
Well,
can hear.
thank you, and thank you for promoting me. I haven't had a promotion in a while. Thank you, and I too would like to express appreciation to Joe and all the staff who've been working on this, and much appreciate the presentation. I'm involved with the Kennebec Lake Association and also with the hamlet of Arden to the south of Highway 7. And I'm intrigued with the presentations around the potential for a 400 series highway, not positively so personally, but also the rail corridor, of course. And so many of us in the area are following all of that with great interest. But not being a person in the village of Sharbot Lake, I want to be really sure that our council is well aware that we're a township of more than just Sharbot Lake. And we're all concerned down in this area about the implications, what either of these developments could mean, both the rail corridor and the 400 series highway. And like to just ask how we might be able to access more specific information in its current state, and then also to ask about some form of a guarantee that there will be the opportunity for further involvement in discussions around these two developments.
Thank you, Terry. It's Joe Gallivan. I can start to answer the question, and then maybe possibly Kathy or the mayor can respond as well. With respect to the 400 series highway, so that's based on discussions that we've had with MTO staff over the last few years. I can advise you that at some point MTO on their website will be posting an Eastern Region master plan, future master plan for all their roads in Eastern Ontario. And the expectation is at that time they'll unveil the likelihood of a 400 series highway over the next 25 years. Having said that, as staff, when we wrote the plan, we wanted to make sure that it was very clear to MTO that the township has a different vision of part of Highway 7 in the future than they may have. Because if you don't put it in writing now, you don't lay your chips on the table now. I guess I can say my own experience in the last 30 years dealing with MTO, you have to make them listen to what you're saying, or they'll just move ahead, because they're all about moving cars fast. That's really what it gets down to. So at some point, I expect next year they're going to release that plan, and when they do, we can definitely share it. with Via Rail, from the staff level, we've had no communication with Via Rail. Only you saw the map in the presentation. That map, I went on to Via Rail's website, and they had a very high level business plan that is now at least 3 years old. That map showed the route. There was no commitments in that map about timing or anything else. So it's very limited information, and I don't know if they've talked to any of council or township staff. So maybe I would ask the mayor if she wanted to comment, or Kathy. Thank you.
Sure, I can comment. We've had no contact from VIA, and probably, well, I think 2 years ago when they got another little pot of funding, they basically called to say we're working on it. But other than that, there hasn't been any communication. And the same thing with the corridor. When this first came out, Joe and I actually met with the parliamentary assistant of the Ministry of Transportation and basically said exactly what Joe has just stated. We do not want to become a community that's drive-by, and you need to look at alternate plans about how you're going to respect our village and our community and not make us a ghost town. So the ministry does know what we're feeling about that, and Via Rail, we'll see what happens hopefully in our lifetime. They keep getting lumps of money, but they don't seem to be moving the project forward, but maybe we'll hear something in 2021.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Terry?
No, the only other thing would be to just repeat what I'd said at the end, that certainly people down in our corner of the township would appreciate the opportunity to engage in dialogue as any things move forward in their potential.
Perfect. Okay, great. I'm just looking at the list. I do have 2 hands up from people who have already spoken. I'm not sure if we just, I'm just going to double check with them to see if they have another question or whether we just need to lower their hands. Jean Brown, your hand is up. Do you have an additional question, or did I just forget to lower your hand?
I didn't lower my hand, so I guess I don't have any questions particularly. Just thank you for the process and all your hard work on all this. Cindy, we were sending you emails like mad. You did very well. So thank you so much to the whole crew.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for participating. And lastly, again, Nikki Gowdy, just double check with you to see if you had an additional comment or question.
No, I'm good. Thank you, though.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now, was there anyone else? Oh, Andy Dillon bring him in here. Hi, Andy.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, one thing I was concerned about restricting development would be the dates on when consents were last created. Is there any flexibility on that?
Stu Galvin, I'm going to put Sonia on the spot because we've been having this conversation beyond Central Frontenac about the pros and cons of changing the date in official plans, about allowing severances. So do you want to talk about this a bit, Sonia?
Sure, Joe. We have been having conversations with the other townships, both in Frontenac, and it's something that I've seen in other rural communities, sort of in southeastern Ontario, that historically the process has been that when the official plan is updated or there is a new official plan, that the clock has been restarted. That's been what's happened historically. That is not something that most municipalities are continuing with. And that relates back to, if you remember Joe's presentation and the slide that showed the pyramid and the hierarchy of various policies, is that there's very much direction from the province that the creation of new lots and particularly rural residential development be limited in scope. Now, of course, limited is undefined. They do leave municipalities with that flexibility. But one of the things that municipalities have become more consistent with is they may change some of the specifics about maybe the number of lots or the zoning related to the lots, but most municipalities are starting to keep whatever the most recent historic date was, and instead of changing that, carrying that date forward. And again, that is to basically limit the fragmentation of rural land, so that you're maintaining parcels for agriculture, and so that you're able to service things efficiently, and trying to promote development in your settlement areas as opposed to spread out across vast rural areas. So that's the trend that we're seeing, and it's based on provincial policies.
Okay, yeah, one other thing was with a large amount of private lanes, I was reading there that any new development on private lanes would require the lanes to be upgraded. Is that correct?
It's Joe, Andy. Yes, yes, to a degree. It depends on what the proposal is in terms of is it infill development? Are you adding one lot? Where is the lots being added on? Is it near the public road or not? So in previous situations in Central Frontenac, we have dealt with it on a case-by-case basis where there may be sections of a private road where new lots are going to be created, that not the entire, let's say, 2-kilometer stretch, but there may be a 300-meter stretch that needs to be brought up to standards. And if new lots are going to be created, the onus is put on the new lot owners to do the upgrades. And that's based on a county-wide piece of work we did about 5 years ago that tried to set standards, and it did set standards for new development on private roads. And the reason we did that is when we were doing the county official plan in 2016, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs was going to shut down all new development on private roads, except through plan of subdivision. And development on private roads represents more than 60% of the tax base of the entire county, almost 70%. So our argument was that was really a ridiculous argument. That, you know, I know you've been on a lot of different cottage roads throughout Central. There's some that are in very good condition. There's others that need to be upgraded. So we did all that work, and in this draft plan, we've got a whole new policy section on private roads that sets up the criteria for when and how much work you need to do to upgrade a private road if you're going to create new lots.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. Cindy, is there anybody else waiting that you can see that wants to comment or ask a question?
I do have another question from Derek Redmond. Hi, Derek.
Hello. Can I ask about areas of natural and scientific interest? Is that list of places, including the Ardoch Bog and so on, does that list come directly from some other list, like at the county level? And is there a process for adding to that list?
Hi, Derek, it's Joe Gallivan. We just got your email before the meeting tonight, and I can just advise you that the ANSIs, which is what they're called, the acronym, those are all provided to us from the Ministry of Natural Resources. They're the ones who assign that designation. So that's where we get that information from, and we use that as the basis for putting the designation on. You talked about a lake today in your email that sounds very special, and I'm going to look more into it, and I will check with our GIS to see if there's any designation on it that we may have missed, and I will get back to you via email.
Okay, I appreciate that. I understand now that it might be quite a process if I have to go up to the provincial level to get it designated.
Yes, and I can advise you that that list hasn't changed much in the last 10 years. M&R has not done a lot of field work in the last decade. And some of those ANSI designations go back to the 1970s.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Is there anyone else that has
Around the
any
lake.
questions?
Yeah, I know what you're talking.
I do not see anyone else with their hand up. So last call, if there's any other questions or comments, if you want to use the raise hand feature. I do not see anyone else wishing to speak. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. Are we able to put back up the slide that just shows the next steps and some of the contact information for people in case they're interested?
Bring that up right now.
Great, thank you. And so as we've mentioned, we have the formal public meeting for the official plan is scheduled to go to a special meeting of council on May 18th at 6 o'clock. So again, like everything else in life right now, it's going to be held online. So on here, there is a link that's available either on Central Frontenac's website, or you can email Cindy to request to register in advance for that. And then you'll get a confirmation email containing information about joining the webinar. If you think of questions or comments that you have following tonight's open house, please feel free to send those to us, ideally in advance of May 18th at planning@frontenaccounty.ca. And just as a rough timeline, the intent is after the public meeting on May 18th, we would be looking for Township Council adoption of the plan in either June or July, and then approval from County Council by September of this year. So I'll just open it up. I'll just see if there's anybody else from staff or perhaps from Mayor Smith who want to say a few words before we close out the open house for tonight.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of council, thank you staff very much for your input. The presentation was excellent, even though I have seen it a few times. I think it gets better every time we go through it, Joe. So yeah, some good questions tonight, good comments. Nothing that I see that is going to require us to change anything, but certainly it sounds like the concerns that folks have around the water and the ANSIs and how we do planning is very important and important to council as well. So thank you to everybody who attended and to staff for a job well done.
Great, thank you, Mayor Smith. And yes, thank you for everybody. Time is a precious commodity, so thank you for sharing yours with us tonight. I have been taking some notes. We are going to put together a short summary so that we can present that to council as part of the public meeting in May, so that all members of council, even if they weren't able to attend to hear tonight, are able to have a read through what the comments and questions were, and staff will be looking at any follow-up emails and any follow-up questions that we need to maybe do some further work on or have some further conversations about. So once again, thank you to everybody for participating tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at the public meeting on May 18th. Thank you.
And before we sign off, if I may just put a public service announcement out, if you're really into public engagement and want to do it all over again tomorrow night, we are doing a public engagement session for our downtown revitalization streetscaping design workshops. So there's information on our website about that. If you're interested in how you want the downtown of Sharbot Lake to look at, it'll be run by our consultants, and they have some really neat creative ideas. So I encourage anyone who's interested in that to join us again tomorrow night. I think it begins at 6 as well, but
yes,
there's information on our website on that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Cindy, for sharing that. Yeah, so looking forward to another engagement session tomorrow night on online design. So really interested to hear what people's ideas are for the downtown of Sharbot Lake.
Yeah,
sure. I'd like to thank Joe and Sonia for the presentation. It was great.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
And thanks for your patience as we dealt with the technical glitches, and have a good evening, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.